Okay, I want to take another look to recap texturing and UVing a basic model. Um, let's get started. When we have a initial cube, it looks like it's got surfaces on it, and that's just the way that Blender is rendering it. What we're really seeing is a wireframe model like this, which needs to be covered in a surface, which is called a UV, which allows us to apply a texture. It's called a UV, nothing to do with ultraviolet light or anything like that. When we're moving an object in 3D space, as we've talked about before, you can move it in the X, Y and Z axes. But to describe the surface, they use U, V and W. U's across, V's up, and W represents the normal. A normal is uh, a little. It's a way of identifying which way around a surface is facing. And these little blue lines here indicate the direction of the normals. When you add a primitive, they're usually on the outside of the surface. But as you can imagine, if you wanted to make a room, you would want your normals pointing inwards so you can see the walls. But I digress. Okay, we're going to work on a cube to try and keep things a bit simple for the time being. Let's put it into solid mode again. To get into the UV editing mode, we change it from default up at the top to UV editing. This is the UV window. You can use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out, or you can press the mouse wheel to kind of grab it and move around the area. To unwrap something in the simplest way, which is what we'll cover first, select all the faces that you wish to be included in the unwrap, then go to UV mapping, unwrap, smart UV project, and just agree to the default settings. And there you see we've unwrapped it, which is like unfolding a cardboard box into what we call a net. If you flatten a cardboard box out, this is what you could get. Obviously there's lots of different ways you could unwrap this, but as a starting point this is good enough. At the moment we haven't got a texture under this, so we've no way of applying anything to make it a little bit more interesting. We've only got so much space on a UV map for a texture, so anything which is not directly covered by the faces is wasted space. This gap at the top is kind of texture resolution we've lost to infinity. Okay, right, once you've got your model unwrapped, you can draw textures directly on this once we've got a texture on. We'll do new texture. I would just work with the default size for the time being. 1024 is fine. Alpha lets the image be transparent if you wanted to see through parts of it. Just go with blank for the time being as well, and click OK. And now we have a texture. Now this window here hasn't changed at all. Now this is because of the display modes available to us. We're just in a kind of flat, solid surface at the moment. If we changed it to textured, then you can see the texture. You see this is just turned black. But at the moment we can't really see a great deal on here. It's because there's no lighting model activated. If we go back to the default view and change it back to textured, again you can still see it's black. At the moment we're in display mode, shading mode. Here we are, multi-texture, textured solid. If we change it from multi-texture to GLSL, then we can see the lights and how they affect the surface. At the moment we've only got the one light on. This is a light here. This other thing's the camera. So what I would like to do is add some materials to this cube. I'll add another light while we're at it. I'm just going to shift, duplicate, enter. It's just to copy the lamp. And you can see this side of the cube lights up as we drag a light over there. Let's do shift, duplicate, enter, and drag a third light on over here. So let's pop this one over here, and we've got a crude 3-point lighting rig. Incidentally, the brightness of these lights can be changed over here. Energy adjusts how bright the light is, and you can add some colour to the lights as well. I'll just put a few different colours on so you can kind of see the effect of that. So we can see the different coloured lights shining on the surface. Right, I'm going to grab the cube and stick it into edit mode. Add a new material. New material, we'll call this brick. Let's select one face. Let's have two faces of brick. So I've selected those, selected the material over here and chosen the sign, and it still looks the same. We can change the colour of the diffuse just to confirm we've actually assigned the material to those sides. But now what we can do, we can add a texture to this material. To do that, we come up next to the material window. There's a texture window, so we click new to add a new texture. Then we change it from clouds to image or movie, because we're going to add a movie. Scrolling down, coordinates, these need to be the UV as our coordinates, and then we shall open a texture. There should be, that's brick, let's open that, and now you can see the texture appear on the surface of the thing. At a reasonable quality. Now once you've got the texture in, there's a few things you can do to it. We've got size and offset initially. Size, if you turn up the size, you can see the texture's kind of shrinking down. So if I change it from 1 to say 5 and the Y one to 5, see we've now got a lot more brick showing on the surface. But because the texture we're using isn't what's called seamless, you can see where one texture ends and the next one starts as it kind of wraps around itself. We'll cover seamless textures and how to make those later on in the game. Now if you're so inclined also, you can use the black and white values inherent in any picture to create what we call a normal, which I'll just show you. It kind of serves to almost emboss the texture into the surface of the thing. This is useful because it's not actually increasing the amount of geometry on the surface and just kind of faking the effect of detail. But fake or real, it still looks nice. I'm just changing the materials specular value, which is how shiny it is. Specularity, you can go really glossy or not very glossy. As a rule, bricks aren't terribly shiny. Right, I'm going to add a new material just so we've got a few to look at. So I'm going to select that side and that side and go new material, new, and we'll call it what else we got? Other material. Can't remember what texture I've had. And assign that to the selected faces. Did I only just select one face? No, I selected two. Sign, and then scroll up. New image or movie. UV. Open desktop. What should we have? Let's go with this metal texture. This will do. And again, you can see that's now on those two surfaces. Let's deselect them. Let's make them a bit smaller again. So size. That's a bit like a steel plate. Add some normals on there. Play around with the slider until it's looking about right. Now the offset values over here will slide the texture along the x-axis or the y-axis. It helps if you want to line things up on the edges. Again, that material is probably a bit shiny. Let's turn its specularity down. That's looking fine. So we've got two materials and some faces just left as they were. Let's go back to break and break, and then the texture. Let's just change that back to 1 because it fits on there better. Right. So we've got a UV and we've applied some materials to the surface. What we're able to do now is bake these materials into a single texture. Now this is useful because it gives you a complete texture that you're able to load on as a single material in the Blender rendering engine or in cycles, which again we're going to cover later. Go back to UV editing, and with all these faces selected, we need to bake it. So I hit the space bar to bring up my search and select bake, and you will see it look at all the surface of the texture and give us a complete texture map, which we can't currently view in this window because we're still in GLSL mode. So if I go back into default and change it from GSL mode back to multi-texture, then now we're just looking at the texture we baked out. Now this is useful because this texture, we've now got the option to reload as a material, and it will have bricks on one side and the steel plate on the other side. Then we can play with the lighting effects and continue to add and build on top of the texture. Going back into the UV, we've also got the option we can take this texture into Photoshop and work into it, add some more detail. The other thing we're able to do is change into texture paint mode. Now this will let us draw directly onto the model. It should do. Are we in textured mode? It's not having any of that. Oh, is it selected? Select all. Texture paint. Why is it not letting us do that? Oh, there it goes. And you see it's adding to the texture. It was just having a funny moment. And you can see how each face relates to a different part of the UV over here. Now the UV, it's best going for nice square faces. Once the faces get changed or distorted, it has quite a dramatic effect on the way the texture is displayed on the model. If I start grabbing corners of this, you can see how quickly it starts to mess with what we're looking at. Let's grab that one, and it distorts and ends up harder and harder to texture neatly. You'll find on most models there's usually a compromise between perfectly beautiful squares which texture easily and what's actually achievable, but the closer to square the better. Right, that will do it for this video. Thank you for watching.